For the next few weeks, I'd like to talk about what the Bible has to say about being rich, and it does have a lot to say about it. Before I get there, just by way of review, I wanted to mention a couple of things. Last Sunday, I talked about the importance of having life insurance, especially if you're in your younger to middle-aged years. And one thing that I forgot to say about that, just to give you one more encouragement to do it if you haven't done it, is that there's only one reason not to have term life insurance, and that is if you hate your wife and children. That's the only reason in the world not to have term life insurance and a large term life insurance policy to take care of them if you're gone. That's the only reason. And the other thing I wanted to do is correct an error that I made. I was talking about long-term care insurance, nursing home coverage, and I had the quote, I quoted an article in the outline, and it was in the outline correctly, but I read it incorrectly, and I said that it cost $1,200 per month for long-term care insurance. It actually costs $1,200 per year, so that's a lot less. And that wouldn't have made a whole lot of sense when I said long-term care isn't really all that expensive. If you get it when you're 60, it's only $1,200 a month, right? That's pretty expensive. But no, it's only $100 a month, $1,200 per year. But Lord willing, this type of thing will never happen again, because I have officially appointed Austin to be the church sermon mistake catcher, and he will call me out on it in real time if something like that happens again. And if he fails to do so, the fault will be entirely on him now, not on me. So, okay, good. All right. Okay, so let's talk about being rich, what the Bible says about being rich. And the first thing I want to dispel is this idea that being rich should be vilified, because there are people out there that either take one of two extreme positions on the rich and being rich. It's either they vilify it or they idolize it, one of the two. And we shouldn't do either one. Let's look at Ecclesiastes 10 and verse 20. Ecclesiastes 10 and verse 20. It says, "Curse not the king, no, not in thy thought, and curse not the rich in thy bedchamber, for a bird of the air will carry the voice, and that which hath wings shall tell the matter." And of course, in modern day, I can't help but think of the bird of the air carrying the matter being Twitter, right? Twitter, little bird, right? You go out there and start mouthing off on Twitter, and people are going to find out. But yeah, it says not to curse the rich in thy bedchamber. So don't curse them to their face, but don't even curse them in private, it says. So it's not right to curse the rich. It's not right to have this vilification of them in your mind. It's not right to hate the rich. Rich people are, in many cases, great people. In most cases, they worked really hard for what they got, and they got there by providing goods and services for other people and by helping other people and helping the economy, providing jobs, all those things. So yeah, there's a few rich people out there that are bad people, of course. And there's a lot of poor people out there and a lot of average people out there that are bad people too, right? There's just good and bad people across the whole spectrum. But we shouldn't be vilifying the rich, especially those who got it honestly, which most of them did. You always want to remember when it comes to riches that it comes from God, that God is the one that gives men power to get wealth. Ecclesiastes 8 and verse 18. And you want to remember this for two reasons. Because you don't want to envy or despise wealthy people, because remember, God's the one that gave it to them. And also, you don't want to be proud and arrogant yourself if you happen to be the one who is wealthy or someday becomes wealthy. Now let's look at Deuteronomy 8 and verse 18. Deuteronomy 8:18. This is when the Lord was telling Israel, when he was taking them into the promised land, that they were going to inherit a lot of affluence. They were going to be wealthy, and he wants them to remember where it came from. Deuteronomy 8:18, "But thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is he that giveth thee power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant which he sware unto thy fathers, as it is this day." It is God that gives power to get wealth. Like I just said, most wealthy people worked very, very, very hard for it. You will be hard-pressed to find a millionaire or a billionaire that didn't work crazy amounts of hours for a lot of years and risked a lot and really, really was sacrificed to get where he is. But it is God that gave him the power to do that. Without God giving you the power to get wealth, you won't get any. It's by God's blessing. And I hate the idea of pride and arrogance where people have this haughty spirit about them if they are wealthy because they think that they got it because they're so smart or something, or they're better than other people. And that's not true. It's God that gives the power to get wealth, even if he does use your good work ethic to help you to do it. And if you're the one that ends up wealthy, or if you are wealthy, or if you end up being wealthy, don't be proud of it. Remember that you didn't get it on your own. Verse 17, the previous verse. And thou shalt say in thine heart, my power and my might, my power and the might of mine hand hath gotten me this wealth. Especially in their case, God brings them into the promised land and they have all this wealth. You would certainly be in error to say that it was your power and your might that got it. It'd be like if you got an inheritance and then you're like, yeah, I'm such an amazing guy, I'm wealthy. Well, yeah, because somebody gave it to you, right? Big deal. But even if you did work for it, God gives the power to get wealth. And without him, it's not going to happen. In 1 Chronicles 29 and verse 12, the Lord tells us here through his servant David that riches come from him. 1 Chronicles 29 and verse 12. Let's back up to verse 11. Thine, O Lord, is the greatness and the power and the glory and the victory and the majesty, for all that is in the heaven and in the earth is thine. Thine is the kingdom, O Lord, and thou art exalted as head above all. It says, I believe it's in Psalm 24 and verse 1, that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. So it all belongs to God. Everything is his. All that is in the heaven and in the earth is his. And then verse 12. Both riches and honor come of thee, and thou reignest over all. And in thine hand is power and might, and in thine hand it is to make great and to give strength unto all. So God owns it all. God has all the power and the strength, and therefore God, it is his prerogative to give some of what he owns to somebody else to be a steward of it, essentially, is what it is when you're wealthy. You are a steward of what God has given you. And he's the one that gives the strength to get it and to maintain it. The Lord is the maker of the rich, the Bible tells us, as well as the poor. Proverbs 22 and verse 2. And we hear about self-made men. I mean, there's an element of truth to that, but really it's God-made men. If you're a self-made man, you're a God-made man because God gave you that wealth and you wouldn't have it if you didn't. Proverbs 22 and verse 2. The rich and poor meet together. The Lord is the maker of them all. See, the Lord makes both men. He makes both rich and poor men. It is God's prerogative. He has, in his providence, decided to bless some men with wealth and some men without it. Some men are given poverty. Some men are given wealth. Now, that may not sound fair, but it's a fact. That's just how God does things. And you could ask him about it, but you're probably not going to get very far. Just be thankful that you have what you have. Because every one of us is far wealthier than the vast majority of the inhabitants of this planet. Most people on this planet are relatively poor. Some are extremely poor. So all of us have it really well, if you think about it. It tells us in 1 Timothy 6 and verse 17 that God gives us richly all things to enjoy. But I missed a verse. Before you go there, Proverbs 10 and verse 22. It is the blessing of the Lord that makes rich. Proverbs 10:22. The blessing of the Lord, it maketh rich, and he addeth no sorrow with it. See, if it's God's blessing in your life to give you wealth, then he doesn't add sorrow with it. Satan can also bless you with wealth, but then sorrow comes along with it. Satan can bless you with wealth by tempting you with it, or by putting thoughts and motives in your heart to do wicked things to get it, right? Didn't Satan cause Peter to tell Jesus that he wasn't going to be crucified? Didn't Satan put it in Judas's heart to betray Christ? So Satan can put things in your heart. He can put things in your heart to do dishonest things, to get wealth. You can get wealth that way. You can rob banks and you can make a good living at it for a while. For a while. But when that kind of blessing comes, sorrow is added with it. But when the Lord blesses, he doesn't add sorrow with it. If you do it God's way, chances are you're going to be happy in the end. If you do it the wrong way, you're probably not. All right, now turn with me to 1 Timothy 6 and verse 17. 1 Timothy 6 and verse 17. The Lord gives us richly all things to enjoy, because remember, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. 1 Chronicles 29, right? It's all his, and he has the strength and power to give it to whom he pleases. 1 Timothy 6 and verse 17. Charge them that are rich in this world, that they be not high-minded, nor trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God, who giveth us richly all things to enjoy. See, God is the one that gives us richly all things to enjoy. The riches come from him. And this is written to a preacher, and he's to charge Christians in a church that have wealth and riches, and remind them that God is the one that gives us riches, or gives us richly all things to enjoy. We'll get back to this passage in a little bit here, showing you that it's not wrong to have wealth. It's not evil to have wealth. That's a false doctrine out there that some people have bought into. But now you may think, well, yeah, God gives righteous people wealth, right? But these wicked, evil people, they got their wealth by their own scheming and devices, and they didn't get their wealth by God. God didn't bless evil people with wealth. God only blesses good people with wealth. But that's not true. God blesses evil people with wealth too. Hosea 2 and verse 8. God gives wealth to people that misuse it. Hosea 2 and verse 8. So you don't want to assume, just because somebody's wealthy, that God's face is smiling down upon them, because it may not be. Hosea 2 and verse 8. For she did not know, he's talking about Israel here, for she did not know that I gave her corn and wine and oil and multiplied her silver and gold. In other words, made her rich. Silver, gold, corn, wine, and oil. You got all kinds of money and all the finer things in life. God made her rich, in other words. And then look what it says. Which they prepared for Baal. God gives them all this wealth, and they prepare it for Baal. They use it to worship a false god. They use it for evil, in other words. But God gave it to them. Right? God even gives riches to the wicked. So therefore, if a person despises a rich man who earned his wealth honestly, he's really despising God who gave it to him. You think about that. The next time you're envious, and I hope you're not, but the next time you feel envious of wealthy people, you're really despising God who gave that person that wealth. God makes rich and God makes poor. God's chosen to give some people a lot, and he's chosen to give other people a little bit. And to despise the person that's been given a lot is to despise the God who gave it to him. And you don't want to go there. Envy is the rottenness of the bones. Envy is a horrible, horrible thing. And it says the spirit that dwelleth in us lusteth to envy in the book of James, I believe it is. And so every one of us has that temptation. Some people just have more of a struggle with it than others, just like every other sin. Everybody's got their sin that's their particularly hard thing. But if you struggle with envy, you need to root that out of your life. If you look at somebody that's wealthy and that has a lot, and you hate them for it, or you wish so badly you had what they had, and you just wish, oh man, I can't wait till that guy gets what's coming to him. You wait until he's poor like some other people are. You want to root that out of your heart, because that'll destroy you and ruin you. We should be genuinely happy for everybody who does well. It doesn't matter if they do way better than we do. We should be genuinely happy for everybody who does well, no matter how well they do. You should be able to watch shows where they go and interview the rich, where they walk through their garages and look at millions and millions of dollars worth of cars, walk through their beautiful houses, tour their beautiful yachts. You should be able to watch that and enjoy it, and it just should make you happy. It should not make you envious. If that makes you envious, if that makes you think, oh man, it must be nice to be him, why didn't God give that to me? You need to check your heart. You need to check your heart. Now, maybe that person that owns all that stuff's going to die and go to hell. It very well might be. But nevertheless, don't despise him while he lives just because he's rich. There's nothing wrong with being rich. Let me give you a few people in the Bible that were rich. I mentioned these way back, probably 6 months ago when we started this series. But let's recover that information. Abraham is the first one that we read about. I don't know if he's the first person in the Bible that was said to be rich. I didn't actually do that search, but he was one of the early people in the Bible that was said to be rich anyway. In Genesis 13 and verse 2, it says, "And Abram," this is before his name was changed to Abraham, "and Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold." Now here's a godly man who's very rich. Now some people think that can't be the case. If you're very rich, you are wicked. There's no doubt about it, right? No rich man ever got rich by being godly. That's just simply not true. That's a stupid statement to make. Abraham refutes that. And I mentioned this last time, and I'll mention it again. This is very interesting. This is such a short little verse. You could memorize this in a couple of minutes probably if you repeated it to yourself 20 times. That's the way to memorize. Abraham is very rich. He's got three things. He's got silver, he's got gold, he's got cattle. Silver is his expenses, money for his everyday expenses. That's you spend silver, right? That's not that valuable. He's got gold, which is his emergency savings. That's what you save in, right? So he's got his spending money that he covers his expenses with. He's got his emergency fund in gold. And then he's got his income-producing assets and investments. Cattle. Cattle are income-producing assets. Cattle reproduce themselves. Cattle grow, right? Money itself doesn't grow. If you put it in the bank, you can make interest on it. So if you do things with money, it grows. But if you have cattle, as long as you feed them and keep them up, right? They continue to produce. Not only do they reproduce themselves and multiply, they produce milk and they produce leather, from their skin and other things that you can get out of them. So Abraham is diversified in three different areas. And so should you be. You should have money that covers your expenses. You should have an emergency fund. And you should have income-producing investments. Now, you could have cattle if you wanted to, or you could take the easy route and own a different type of stock. Right? You can own stock. You can own a stock of cattle, like live stock, or you can go the easy route and you can own stocks, income-producing stocks. And there are, of course, other ways to invest as well, as I've talked about before. Now, David was also a rich man. 1 Chronicles 29 and verse 28. 1 Chronicles 29, verse 28. So speaking of David, and he died in a good old age, full of days, riches, and honor, and Solomon his son reigned in his stead. David died full of riches and honor, and full of days. And he was only 70. Right? He was not an old man, especially by biblical standards, but by this time people were not living hundreds of years. But yeah, David died 70 years old, good old age, full of riches and honor. David was a man after God's own heart, yet he was rich. Right? Some people tell us, like I said, no, you can't be both. You can't be a godly man and a rich man. You certainly can. You can be a godly man and a poor man. You can be a godly man and a rich man. You can be an ungodly man and a poor man. You can be an ungodly man and a rich man. Right? These things are not necessarily correlated. But you got a better chance of being wealthy if you're godly, because if you're godly, you're going to fear God, keep His commandments, you're going to do what He says, you're going to manage your money the way that God says to, and you get a lot better chance of being wealthy. Then, of course, Solomon. Solomon was rich. I think everybody knows that. 1 Kings 10 and verse 23. 1 Kings 10 and verse 23. Solomon was very rich. Now, when you're a king, and you tax the people and all this stuff, and you can get pretty rich being a king, being a president, being a politician. Especially these days, you can really clean house doing that. Do a few years there in Congress, and then all of a sudden somebody just offers you these wildly, hugely high-paying jobs for doing nothing in some board of some corporation somewhere. It's funny how that happens. Like the guy that gets some PhD education while he was in Congress that enabled him to get this great job when he gets out and make all this money. Maybe he's being paid back for some favors that he did for some people. Maybe, just maybe, that's the case. Those are the kind of rich people that you are free to vilify, if you'd like. Politicians that get rich are scoundrels. Pretty much guaranteed. If they're rich before they get there, that's one thing. If they're rich after they become a politician, they're a scoundrel. It's pretty much a guarantee. Maybe not in every single case, but just about everyone, I would think. 1 Kings 10 and verse 23. So King Solomon exceeded all the kings of the earth for riches and for wisdom. He had it all. He had both. And he did really well until the end of his life. And then outlandish women caused him to sin, and he went after other gods. But he did great for a long time. But so here again, at this time in his life, a godly man and a very rich man. You can be both. And then let me give you another example in the New Testament, and that is Joseph of Arimathea. He was a disciple of Jesus, and yet he was rich. Matthew 27 and verse 57. Matthew 27 and verse 57. When the even was come, there came a rich man of Arimathea, named Joseph, who also himself was Jesus' disciple. So, rich man, disciple of Christ, Christian, in other words. Here is a rich Christian. Nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, it's a great thing. I love rich Christians. Rich Christians can do a lot of good in the world and in the church. I love poor Christians too. I love all Christians. But rich Christians are great because rich Christians have means to help other people out that poor people just don't have the means to do. It's just, just a fact. Poor people can give. Like in 2 Corinthians 8, the people in Macedonia, out of their deep poverty, they were still liberal in their giving, but it's a relative thing, right? If you're in deep poverty, you can be liberal in giving relatively. You can't give what you don't have, obviously. So, yes, if you have almost nothing and you give 25% of it to help the poor, you've given liberally, but you've probably given very little. If you're wealthy and you give 25% of what you have to give to the poor, you've made an enormous difference in a lot of people's lives. You see what I'm talking about? So these godly men, despite their flaws, were yet very rich. They were godly men, despite their flaws, and yet they were very rich. Now, I told you we'd get back to 1 Timothy 6, 17 through 19. Go ahead and turn back there. And we're going to see here how Paul instructed rich Christians to be generous with their wealth, but he did not condemn them for having it. He didn't tell them they didn't deserve it. He didn't tell them that, that Like, remember Obama years ago, and he was talking to somebody, and he said, "You didn't build that." Talking to some business owner, "You didn't build that." The idea that like society built it for you or whatever. If it weren't for society before you and, making all the roads that your stuff is transported on and making the equipment that you use and blah, 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 you didn't build that, right? Well, of course there's a little bit of truth in that, but Obama's point was, you don't deserve that. You didn't really work for that. Well, yeah, the guy did. I guarantee you the guy worked really, really hard for it, right? And to say that you don't deserve what you worked for is nonsense. And the fact that somebody else built a road that you drive on to get to work is immaterial. That other guy got paid for building that road years ago. You don't owe him anything. You get that, right? You don't owe somebody. It's just a stupid argument. You owe people a debt of gratitude that have gone before you and that have done all the work that has built up this modern society. You owe them a debt of gratitude maybe, right? You owe them some respect. But it's not like you owe them money. They were paid for what they did at the time they did it. You get it? So anyway, Paul's not telling these rich people here in the church that you don't deserve what you have. You didn't build that. He didn't tell them that at all. 1 Timothy 6, 17 through 19. Charge them that are rich in this world, that they be not high-minded, nor trust in uncertain riches, but in the living God who giveth us richly all things to enjoy. That they do good, that they be rich in good works, ready to distribute, willing to communicate. Now, he's not telling the government to, find these rich people and force them to distribute, right? Take their money and distribute it for them, redistribute it. He's not telling them. He's not telling some bureaucrat to distribute money. He's telling the rich people themselves to be ready to distribute, willing to communicate, which is to give. Be ready and willing to give when you find needs that are worthy of it, according to God's standards. Laying up in store for themselves a good foundation against the time to come, that they may lay hold on eternal life. He doesn't tell them, charge them that are rich in this world to go and enjoy all of it for yourself, go out, live a lavish lifestyle, enjoy yourself, and just have fun your whole life and don't worry about anybody else. That's not what he's telling them at all. He's telling them to do good. Be rich in good works. Be ready to distribute and willing to communicate. And decent, godly, rich people will tell you that the number one thing that they enjoy the most about having riches is being generous and helping others. It really is more blessed to give than to receive. Rich people in the church, like I say, can be a great blessing to the church. Here's a quote from Dave Ramsey in his book, The Total Money Makeover. He said, Dallas Willard, in his book, The Spirit of Disciples, says to use riches is to cause them to be consumed. To trust in riches is to count upon them for things they cannot provide. But to possess riches is to have the right to say how they will or will not be used. If you are a good person, it is your spiritual duty to possess riches for the good of mankind. If you are a Christian like me, it is your spiritual duty to possess riches so that you can do with them things that bring glory to God. And I wholeheartedly agree with what he said there. I wholeheartedly agree. It's your duty to possess riches, how much ever you may have, to use it for the glory of God. Now that includes all kinds of things like spending and saving and giving and all the things that we've talked about in this series. It doesn't mean you have to give it 100% of it away to the Lord or anything like that. But you use it to the glory of God. You use it in the way that God says to, and God teaches you all those things. Give, spend, save, invest. Now sometimes God chooses to bless those who are humble and fear Him and delight greatly in His commandments with wealth and riches. Sometimes. He doesn't choose to bless every person that fears God and delights greatly in His commandment. He doesn't choose to bless all of them with riches. If that's the case, then every good and godly Christian would be a wealthy person, and that's not simply the case. But God does choose to bless some of His faithful servants with riches like that. Now let's look at Job 36 and verse 11. Job 36. I'm going to give you 3 verses here that will establish this. Job 36:11. But we know for a fact that God doesn't make every single one of such his servants wealthy like this. You know how I know this? I'm talking material wealthy in this world. Jesus Christ was poor. He had not where to lay his head. And he fits the bill here. He was humble. He feared God. And he greatly delighted in his commandments. And guess what? He became poor for our sakes. So this is not some kind of a guarantee. Job 36 and verse 11. This is talking about the righteous. You can see it up there in verse 7. Job 36:11. If they obey and serve him, they shall spend their days in prosperity and their years in pleasures. But if they obey not, they shall perish by the sword, and they shall die without knowledge. So yes, the righteous, if they obey and serve God, will spend their days in prosperity, if God so chooses to bless them that way. And he often does. Psalm 112 and verses 1 through 3. Psalm 112, verses 1 through 3. Praise ye the Lord. Blessed is the man that feareth the Lord, that delighteth greatly in his commandments. His seed shall be mighty upon earth. The generation of the upright shall be blessed. Wealth and riches shall be in his house, and his righteousness endureth forever. See here's the man that fears the Lord and delights greatly in his commandments, and it says wealth and riches shall be in his house. So God does oftentimes bless those who fear him and delight greatly in his commandments with wealth and riches. Now he does this in 2 different ways. I got one more verse I'll go to, but just let me riff on this a little bit, as they say these days. He does this in 2 ways, and I mentioned this before. How does God bless them that delight in his commandments, greatly delight in his commandments? How does he bless them with wealth and riches? Well, 2 ways. Sometimes he just gives it to them. He just, as a father gives an inheritance to his children, he just gives it to them. But other times, he gives it to them through having them obey his commandments. Because God tells us how to manage money in the Bible. I hope you know that by now. I've spent the last 6 months harping on this Sunday after Sunday. God teaches us how to manage money in the Bible. And if you greatly delight in his commandments, and you do what God says in this book, well, that's one of the ways that he blesses with wealth and riches in your house. Let's look at Proverbs 22 and verse 4. Proverbs 22 and verse 4. It says, by humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. By humility, that's a low opinion of yourself. It doesn't say by self-confidence and pride are riches and honor and life. I mean, that's go to just about any secular counselor, any secular psychologist, or just about anybody out there, and they'll tell you the way to success is self-confidence and have pride in yourself. God says just the opposite. God hates pride. And so do I. So should every person. Fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogancy in the froward way, and I forget the rest of it. Do I hate, says wisdom. But it's by humility and the fear of the Lord are riches. Be humble, fear God, which means that you do what he says and obey him. Order your conversation aright and see if the wealth doesn't come eventually. You start doing what God says. Now, wealth is usually, but not always, acquired by those who earned it and deserve it. Not always, but usually wealth comes by people that worked hard for it. I recommend, I like this channel. I love watching it. It's called The School of Hard Knocks on YouTube. Can't remember the kid's name right now. He's a young kid. He's only 23, I think. He's been doing it for a few years. But he's interviewed all kinds of millionaires and billionaires all over the world at this point. He's a really good interviewer. And virtually every single one of the people that he interviews, he said he'll ask often, did you grow up with money? Did you come from money? Absolutely not. I grew up broke. Pretty much every one of them will tell you that. They grew up either just in a normal household or in a subnormal household. Almost every one of them. Most people that make it big started from nothing, and they worked really hard to get there. There are some people out there that are hardworking and industrious, and such often are and deserve to be wealthy. Proverbs 10 and verse 4. Now, there are a lot of other people out there that are hardworking and industrious that don't get super wealthy, right? There's a lot of people that work really hard and don't ever make a whole lot of money. It takes a special kind of person, to be an entrepreneur. And that's another question. He often asks these very wealthy people, do you think anybody can be an entrepreneur? And I'd only heard one of them say yes. Every one of them says absolutely not. No. Anyone cannot be an entrepreneur. Most people can't be. Most people are not cut out for it. That's why the vast majority of people are employees, and just a very few people are employers, and especially large employers that own big firms. Most people are just not cut out for it, right? There's just a few people in this world that have that certain drive and skill set and acumen, and they're the ones that do that. And pretty much the rest of us work for them. That's just how it goes. That's just life. Proverbs 10 and verse 4. He becometh poor that dealeth with a slack hand, but the hand of the diligent maketh rich. The hand of the diligent. So that tells me that if you're diligent and you work hard, well, you are on the path to riches, if the Lord so blesses it. You're not going to get there by being lazy, I can tell you that much. Proverbs 13 and verse 4. The soul of the sluggard desireth and hath nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat. Yeah, everybody desires wealth, but lazy people, that's all they do is desire it. Motivated people desire it, and then they go out there and do something, and they work hard, and they set goals, and they make it with God's help. Now, oftentimes, wise men acquire riches. Proverbs 8 and verse 18. Now, again, not always. There are plenty of wise men out there that are not wealthy men. There are some wise men that spend their time in academia and thinking and philosophizing, or being preachers or whatever, and they're wise, biblically wise, but they don't end up with a lot of wealth in this world. But sometimes wise people do, and there's a good reason for that. Proverbs 8 and verse 18, riches and honor are with me, this is wisdom speaking, yea, durable riches and righteousness. So riches and honor are with wisdom. If you hang out with wisdom, if you have wisdom, then you're on a path to riches and honor. And especially to true riches, to durable riches. Because the Bible talks about material riches make themselves wings and fly away as an eagle toward heaven. But durable riches come from wisdom. The riches of the knowledge of God and of Christ. And the knowledge of the Word of God, which will greatly bless your life. Let's look at Proverbs 14 and verse 24. Proverbs 14:24. The crown of the wise is their riches, but the foolishness of fools is folly. The crown of the wise is their riches. There's a reason why wise people end up with riches. Because what is wisdom? What is a wise person? It's a person that makes good decisions. Right? That's what wisdom is making good decisions. Choosing the best means to get to the end that you are aiming for. Well, if you make good decisions, guess what? You're going to make good decisions with money. You are going to make decisions that are in keeping with the Word of God with money. You are going to work hard. You're going to underconsume. You're going to save a lot of what you make instead of spending it all. You're going to stay out of debt. You're going to make interest instead of pay it. You're going to invest money, like the Lord teaches us there in a couple of the parables. You're going to be wise. You're going to make good decisions, and you're probably going to end up wealthy to one extent or the other. I'm not saying you're going to be like a multimillionaire or something, but you're going to end up with wealth. Proverbs 24, 3 through 4. Proverbs 24, 3 through 4. Through wisdom is an house builded, and by understanding it is established. And by knowledge shall the chambers be filled with all precious and pleasant riches. See, it takes wisdom to build a house. Physically, it takes wisdom to build one. It takes wisdom to build a household. As also, the Bible also refers to a household as a house. So it takes wisdom to do that and to do it right. And then it also takes wisdom and knowledge to fill the chambers with all precious and pleasant riches. Right? Riches shall be in his house. We read there in Psalm 112. And you can do that by knowledge. And it doesn't take a college education. Not at all. It just takes some good old common sense, which is not common anymore. Some people have strength of character and wisdom, and therefore they retain riches, while some are weak and have no self-control and thus lose them. Remember Proverbs, actually we didn't get there yet. Proverbs 11 and verse 16. Proverbs 11 and verse 16. It says, a gracious woman retaineth honor, and strong men retain riches. It's one thing to make money. It's another thing to hold on to it. A lot of fools can make money. Only wise people hold on to it. There's a lot of people out there that make pretty good money, you know. And I listen to the Ramsey show all the time. People call in, yeah, I make $180,000, make $250,000, make $400,000, whatever. Make really good money. And they're broke. Oh yeah, I mean, they get the knowledge to make money. They have some kind of an education or some kind of a skill set to make money, but they're idiots, right? They're fools. They have no wisdom to hold on to it. But at least they're smart enough to call into the Ramsey show. That's a good first start, right? First step in fixing your problem is admitting that you have one. That's the first step. And if you're blessed to make a good living like that, you could get out of debt in no time if you have discipline and go scorched earth on it. I mean, you can be out of debt in months. Be no big deal. So yeah, where was I there? Yeah, strong men. Strong men retain riches. You got to be strong in order to hold on to it. You have to be strong to deny yourself, because within each of us we have this very strong desire for stuff, to buy things that we can't afford. That's why we go into debt, right? And you have to be strong enough to say no to that inner covetous idiot within you. You have to be strong enough to say no, and that takes a lot of strength to say no to yourself. The kind of strong man I'm talking about here is the wise man. I'm not talking about physical strength. Proverbs 24 and verse 5. A wise man is strong, yea, a man of knowledge increaseth strength. See, strong men retain riches, yes. Wise men who have strength to tell themselves no, and who have wisdom to do wisely with their money and invest wisely, and not blow a bunch of money on depreciating assets that aren't going to get you anywhere. Wise men retain riches. People that are weak, have no self-confidence, those riches just flow right through their fingertips. It's like they're putting their money into a bag with holes, like the Lord talks about in, which one of the minor prophets was that? Haggai. In Haggai. It's like they're putting their money into a bag with holes. Now, sometimes fools stumble into wealth by chance. Every now and again that happens. Ecclesiastes 9 and verse 11. Ecclesiastes 9 and verse 11. But it's probably not going to last. Remember, wealth gotten by vanity shall soon be diminished. But Ecclesiastes 9 and verse 11 says, I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill, but time and chance happeneth to them all. Yep. Under normal circumstances, riches come to men of understanding. Riches come to men who make good decisions. Riches come to men who have wisdom, who aren't stupid, make dumb decisions, act like children, right? Riches generally come to people like that. But occasionally, time and chance happens, and riches come to people that are not men of understanding, right? Fools stumble into money sometimes, and usually they stumble right out of it just about as quickly. In and out of it. But that's not how most people became wealthy. If you have that idea that most people, if you're wealthy, it's because you're lucky, you're wrong. You're wrong. Most people are not wealthy because they're lucky. Not at all. Now, with wealth comes much responsibility. It's a solemn duty to possess wealth. Solemn responsibility. And if you're not responsible, you're not going to have it long. You probably won't get it in the first place, but you definitely won't have it long. The Bible teaches that to whom much is given, much is required. Luke 12 and verse 48. Now, God knows the end from the beginning. God knows the hearts of men. So it could very well be that the reason why God doesn't bless a lot of people with wealth is because He looks right into their heart and He knows exactly what's going to happen. He knows what they're going to do. And He knows that to whom much is given, much is required. He's like, they're not going to be able to handle it. It's either going to ruin them or they're just going to blow through it. I'm not going to bother to give it to them. I'm going to give it to somebody who's going to manage it well. Proverbs 12:48. If that is indeed what God does, could you blame Him? If you amass a large fortune or even a small fortune, by the time you die, are you going to leave it to somebody who you know is an idiot and is going to blow it? I wouldn't. Why would you? You'd try to leave it to, at least I would, try to leave it to somebody wise who's going to manage it well and do good with it. Well, why would you fault God for doing the same thing? Luke 12 and verse 48. But he that knew not and did commit things worthy of stripes shall be beaten with few stripes. For unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall much be required. And to whom men have committed much, of him will they ask the more. Right, in the first part of it there, he says that he which knew his Lord's will and prepared not himself, neither did according to his will, should be beaten with many stripes. So if the Lord's given you a lot, He requires a lot from you. So if God's given you riches, He requires you to be wise, to be frugal, to be generous, to manage it well as His steward. And if you're not going to do that or incapable of doing that, then chances are He's not going to commit much to you. He'll commit a little bit to you, some little pittance that you're able to manage or not, and that'll be about it. Now, this is just based on my own personal observation, but it appears to me that most people cannot handle wealth, which is why most people don't have any. You know that? Most people can't handle wealth, which is why they don't have any. Because if we reason back from the effect to the cause, if you have wealth, it's because you can manage it. It's because you can handle it, right? If you have wealth, it's because you can handle it. And if you don't have any wealth, well, that means you probably can't handle wealth, or you would have it, right? Most people have no significant wealth, and therefore most people don't know how to handle wealth. Now, partly because they were never taught. Most people today have never been taught how to handle and manage wealth. I've been trying to do that for the last 6 months here for you. That's the whole goal. I don't want you to be like most people. But most people were not taught in school. But you know what? Who cares about the schools? If your child grows up to be an idiot with money and you say, you know what, that school never taught him how to manage money, you're the idiot. You're the one that didn't teach him how to manage the money. Don't blame it on the school. It's your responsibility. The education of your children is your responsibility. You can delegate it to a school if you want to, but if the school does a terrible job, don't say, well, you know what? Yeah, he doesn't know how to manage money. Yeah, he's indebted to his eyeballs because that stupid school never taught him personal finance. No, you didn't teach him personal finance. That's the problem. Most people, they certainly weren't taught it in school, and they weren't taught it at home. How are they going to be taught it at home? Because most parents these days don't know how to manage money either. Right? You can't teach something you don't know. But it's out there if you want to find it. I mean, you got the Ramsey show, for instance. Millions of people hear that. It's on the radio, right? The information's out there, but honestly, it's really just common sense. Like I said, it's just the problem is people have been so brainwashed and propagandized and lied to by credit card companies and banks and parents and teachers and everybody and car salesmen and health salesmen and mortgage real estate agents. Everybody, people have been lied to everywhere you turn. So they don't have the common sense that normal people would just normally have. It's not really rocket science. Work, I already said it earlier in the sermon. Work hard, underconsume significantly, save a significant portion of your income, and invest. It is not rocket science. Stay out of debt, make interest, don't pay it. Pay for things when you have cash. If you don't have cash, you don't buy things. It's very, very, very simple. This is not rocket science. But because people have been so lied to and they grow up in a culture that is just immersed in this idea of when you want something, you borrow money for it. They don't have common sense anymore. There's no common sense out there in the media. There's no common sense in the financial world. There's no common sense in the household. There's no common sense anywhere. It takes a man strong in character and discipline to retain riches. We've already seen that. Proverbs 11 and verse 16. Strong men retain riches. Weak and foolish men spend all they make and save nothing. Proverbs 21 and verse 20. I know there's some recurring themes here. I've probably said this a time or two already. But you know what? I've got this one shot at you here for 8 months or whatever, and I'm just going to hammer you and hammer you and hammer you and hammer you. I just want to grill it into your head. The rest of the world's had you for 70, 60, 50, 40 years, whatever. I get you for about 8 months, and I'm just going to beat it into your heads as hard as I possibly can. Proverbs 21 and verse 20. Proverbs 21 and verse 20. There is treasure to be desired and oil in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man spendeth it up. See, a wise man, he's got treasure in his house. The fool, he only has treasure in his house long enough to spend it. It's going to be gone. There's an old Irish proverb that I heard years ago by Bill O'Reilly. You remember O'Reilly? Remember the O'Reilly show? I don't know why I remember this. There's certain things you remember, and I remember him saying that, as the old Irish proverb says, a fool and his money are soon parted. And it's like that just stuck in my head, and I only ever heard it one time, and that's been decades ago. A fool and his money are soon parted. Remember the prodigal son? Luke 15, 12 through 14. This is sadly true of a lot of people. Some people, thankfully, most people don't get this far down the line. A lot of times people come to their senses before they're homeless eating with the pigs. Luke 15, 12 through 14. And the younger said to his father, this is the man had 2 sons there in the previous verse. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falleth to me. And he divided unto them his living. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together and took his journey into a far country, and there wasted his substance with riotous living. And when he had spent all, there arose a mighty famine in that land, and he began to be in want. That's what happens when you're foolish with money, and you spend it all, and then some catastrophe, some emergency comes up, and then you're in trouble. But I have good news. I have good news. And seriously, this is really good news. There's always time to change. There's always time to change. Doesn't matter what your age is. If you've been foolish with money in the past, you can reform your ways today, no matter what your age. Doesn't matter. You could be 90 years old. Now, you're not going to get a You're not going to make a ton of headway at 90 because you only probably have about 4 or 5 days or so to get working on it. But it doesn't matter what your age. You can always make the change and do better. Here's another quote from Ramsey. I like this. In the Total Money Makeover. He said, "It is never too late to start. George Burns won his first Oscar at 80. Golda Meir, I think that's how you pronounce her name, Golda Meir was Prime Minister of Israel at 71. Biden was president at, 80-something. He probably wouldn't use him as an example, though, I doubt, if this would have been written today. Michelangelo painted the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel lying on his back on scaffolding at 71. When I'm 71, I very well may be lying on my back for a long time, like in the grave. You know, I'm probably not going to be painting the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, I can tell you that much. Colonel Sanders never fried any chicken for money until he was 65, and Kentucky Fried Chicken is a household name worldwide. Albert Schweitzer was still performing surgery in Africa at 89. That's impressive. It is never too late to start. The past has passed. Start where you are, because that is your only option. And that's true. So there's no sense in beating yourself up and saying, oh, if I'd only known this 20 years ago or 40 years ago or whatever. There's no sense in beating yourself up. Start where you are, start right now, and just move forward and do the best you can. That's all you can do. All right, getting back to being rich. Another thing about riches is it'll make you many friends. Now, we should probably put friends in quotes. I mean, theoretically, you could get a good friend, I guess, if you were rich, but you're likely to have a bunch of people that are friends with you only because of your wealth. Sadly. Proverbs 14 and verse 20. And really, if you think about it, you think, oh, wouldn't it be amazing to be like Jeff Bezos and just you have billions and billions and you just do whatever you want. Like, it doesn't matter. Have anything you want, do anything you want, go anywhere you want. Yeah, I mean, that'd be neat. It would get old, just like anything else. That new yacht, that new $50 million yacht that's like a cruise ship of your own, I bet you it would be like an old rowboat, after walking around on that thing for a couple of months. It's like anything else. Anything. It all gets old. Just go ask Solomon about it. Just go read Ecclesiastes chapter 2. But one thing you think about Jeff Bezos. Maybe the man has real friends from his past. I don't know anything about him, really. But imagine you were Jeff Bezos and say your best childhood friend and your other friends are all dead and you wanted to make a real friend. How easy do you think it is to make a real friend when you're one of the richest people in the world? Probably very, very difficult. I mean, all kinds of people are going to be friendly with you because they stand to gain a lot from you. But to find a real friend, it'd be pretty hard to do that, I would think. Proverbs 14 and verse 20 says, the poor is hated even of his own neighbor, but the rich hath many friends. Many friends. Yeah, because the rich can throw nice parties, have nice dinners, right? It's fun to hang out with rich people. I mean, if they're not snobbish jerks, if they're nice people, it's great to hang out with rich people. I still remember being at a funeral a while back. Wayne was there too. And this family, unbeknownst to probably all of us, but this family was quite wealthy, the extended family anyway. And they invited us out to dinner afterwards at a hotel that they owned, an old historic hotel. And yeah, I mean, and they were nice people. Yeah, it's fun hanging out with the wealthy. Hey, you like steak? Yeah, I sure do. Get the filet mignon and get the prime version of it. Get the good one. I wouldn't have ordered that myself. I can tell you that much. That thing was probably like $40-some or something. But heck yeah, it's fun hanging out with the wealthy. I mean, who wouldn't like that? Rich hath many friends. They were genuinely nice people. They really were. Proverbs 19 and verse 4. Now, if you'd have preached a poor person's funeral and the family said, hey, come on out to Sonic and we'll sit in our cars and enjoy a hamburger after the service. Well, that'd be nice, but not quite as much fun as hanging out and eating filet mignon, right, in a swanky hotel. I'm just being honest here. I mean, that is the truth. Proverbs 19 and verse 4. Wealth maketh many friends, but the poor is separated from his neighbor. Wealth maketh many friends. And you do feel bad for the poor. You really do. They're separated from their neighbor. And in another place, in verse 7, and we'll get to the poor here in a few weeks, but down in verse 7, all the brethren of the poor do hate him. How much more do his friends go far from him? He pursueth them with words, yet they are wanting to him. How sad is that? It's terrible. Every man, it says in Scripture, is a friend to him that giveth gifts. Let's look at verse 6 here, Proverbs 19:6. Many will entreat the favor of the prince, and every man is a friend to him that giveth gifts. If you want to get a lot of friends, start giving a lot of gifts away. You start giving gifts, you'll get friends anyway. You get friends as long as you keep giving the gifts. When you stop giving the gifts, then those kind of friends will probably find another friend. And men will praise you if you do well for yourself. They will. Some will curse you, some will be envious of you, and some will praise you. Psalm 49 and verse 18. Psalm 49 and verse 18. It says, though while he lived, he blessed his soul. This is talking about a wicked rich man. And men will praise thee when thou doest well to thyself. Men will praise thee when thou doest well to thyself. I have a couple of quotes here for you in just a second, but let me give you one more verse. Wealth can make you friends, but it can also make you the wrong kind of friends. This is what happened to King Jehoshaphat in 2 Chronicles 18 and verse 1. He had himself a lot of wealth and made himself a really bad friend. 2 Chronicles 18 and verse 1. Now Jehoshaphat had riches and honor in abundance, and he joined affinity with Ahab. Why? Why? Why would you be a good king of Judah, and you have riches and honor and abundance? You've got everything that heart could wish, and you join affinity with one of the most wicked kings in Israel, Ahab. It said in Scripture that there were none like Ahab who sold himself to work wickedness. This man was about as bad as it gets. I don't understand. It's strange. But, I don't know. Maybe the wealth, the riches, the honor, the prestige, maybe it all went to his head and he just started hanging out with the wrong crowd. I don't know. Strange. But remember there in Scripture, remember Psalm 49:18 when it says that men will praise thee when thou doest well to thyself? Mark Twain said the following. I love Mark Twain. He was so witty. He said, make money, and the whole world will conspire to call you a gentleman. Very true. And then an old Jewish proverb. I thought this one was funny too. With money in your pocket, you are wise, and you are handsome, and you sing well too. Now, it would take a lot more than money in my pocket to make me those things. I can tell you that much. And lastly, for today, though men will show favoritism to the rich, though men will want to be friends with the rich, right? We should not show favoritism to the wealthy, especially in the church. Let me give you a couple of verses, few verses here. Leviticus 19 and verse 15. Don't ever want to show favoritism. It's fine to have wealthy friends. That's nice. But you don't ever want to show favoritism to them. Leviticus 19:15, ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty, but in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor. And you don't want to show respect to anybody, not respect to the poor or to the mighty, right? So we don't go. It goes both ways. You don't show partiality either way. If you're a judge and you have a poor man that comes before the bench and he stole something, you don't say, well, he's poor, okay, I'll let him off the hook. No, don't let him off the hook. And if you have a rich man that comes before the bench and he stole something just in a different way, chances are if he's rich, he probably didn't bump off a 7-Eleven, right? He probably somehow did some financial scheme or whatever. You don't let him off either. You don't let the poor or the rich off. Everybody should be treated the same. Let's look at Job 34 and verse 19. Job 34:19. I read about or saw something about Dubai one time, and they said that in Dubai, like small crime, petty crime is not tolerated at all. Like there is no muggings, there is no burglaries or carjackings or any of that. I mean, I don't know if they'll kill you or what, but I mean, that is not tolerated at all. But big white-collar financial crimes, no big deal. People come there to do that all the time, right? That's not a problem. But you can walk the streets and feel 100% safe. They don't tolerate any of this other stuff. But they shouldn't tolerate any of it. Job 34 and verse 19. Job 34:19. How much less to him that accepteth not the persons of princes, nor regardeth the rich more than the poor, for they all are the work of his hands. He's talking about what is not fit, right? It's not fit to say to a king, thou art wicked, to a prince, ye are ungodly, there in the previous verse. How much less to him that accepteth the person of princes, nor regardeth the rich more than the poor, right? Just as it is not right to say to a king or a prince, you're wicked or you're ungodly, he's saying there, it's even less right to regard the rich more than the poor, to show favoritism to the rich over the poor. We shouldn't do that. And especially when it comes to the church. James 2, 1 through 4. This will be my closing verse for you. James 2, 1 through 4. Actually, I have one more I wrote down after that, so I got two more. James 2, 1 through 4. My brethren, have not the faith of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory, with respect of persons. For if there come unto your assembly, to your church service, a man with a gold ring, in goodly apparel, and there come in also a poor man in vile raiment, and ye have respect to him that weareth the gay clothing, and say unto him, sit thou here in a good place, and say to the poor, stand thou there, or sit here under my footstool, are ye not then partial in yourselves, and are become judges of evil thoughts? So God forbid that a rich person comes in a nice Armani suit or something. He's got some big rings and some very expensive shoes, and he's driving a nice Bentley, and we say, sit here in this nice padded chair right there next to the pastor. Like it would even matter. But and then some poor guy comes in and we say, sit there in the back behind that pillar so I can't see you, or whatever, It'd be terrible. We don't do that. And as a pastor, I need to be vigilant to not show favoritism to anybody for any reason, but especially to show favoritism to the rich. Imagine if we had a rich church member in this church. Turn to 1 Timothy 5:21. Imagine if we had a rich church member, and I find out, he just got a DUI the other night. He blew a 0.15 on the thing or whatever, but it was in another town, and nobody around here really knows about it, and so I'm just going to brush that under the rug because after all, he does put $10,000 a week into the box or something, right? That'd be wrong. Can't do that. 1 Timothy 5, verse 21, I charge thee before God and the Lord Jesus Christ and the elect angels, that thou observe these things without preferring one before another, doing nothing by partiality. As a pastor, you can't be partial. You have to apply the law of God equally to everybody, regardless of their station. You don't treat some